So welcome, and we're glad you can join us. We're going to tell you about birding and watching lots of mammals in nature down under in Australia. Now, we decided to go, if you're going to Australia first, the Australia is as big and varied as the lower 48 of the United States. So you definitely need to pick and choose where are you going to go. We made the decision that we were going to leave Chicago in the winter. Okay, so that limited where we can go because it's going to be way too hot in the interior to visit Uluru. It's also a lot of these areas, Darwin, Cairns, a lot of tropical birding. Those are all, a lot of the lodges are even closed because it's so wet and rainy during that time period. We focused in on the southern part, southeast part of Australia, and we also went to Tasmania, which has more mammals than I think I just every day. We're just seeing so many mammals, so it's really cool. So with that, we started in over here on the other map. We flew in, you can kind of see our route. We flew into Sydney, as most people do, are common. Then we did a little jog, drove along the coast, went up more towards the interior, then did Glue Pot Reserve, and then flew down to Tasmania, and then did a little loop up to Brisbane for some tropical birding. So we arrived in Sydney. This is the site that everyone knows from Sydney, the Opera Bridge. And then we knew we needed to get over our jet lag. So we were out in the park walking around and we noticed the sign. We went to we also always go visit art galleries. We're not just bird people. And so we went to the art gallery in New South Wales. And isn't this a wonderful? Look at these fruit bats hanging on the clothesline. I love that.
Are they real bats?
No, they're art. And of course, some Aboriginal art. This is a wonderful museum. It's just Australians and it's Aboriginal and Europeans, but all native Australians. And then very quickly, we were walking around the Botanic Garden. Here's kind of the view, you know, a little bit different than Chicago in January. And of course, we started seeing our first Australian birds that are everywhere. Rainbow lorikeets and cockatoos you see 2, 3, 5 times a day. And of course, dusky moorhen. And of course, you always see cool reptiles. I mean, I don't see anybody like a water dragon on my walks here in Lake County. So, and then we saw this guy here. This is a channel-billed cuckoo. You know, it's a brood parasite like the cowbirds. You know, they lay their eggs in some other bird's nest and they walk away and say, go feed this, go read this guy. Except this guy is huge. He's the size of an osprey. So he's a big brood parasite. Now, I love this book. This book is really good. It came out about a year ago. You guys should all put it on your holiday wish list. Okay. It's called Habitats of the World, a field guide for birders, naturalists, and we went to the different areas. In the US, we have oaks everywhere. Majestic oaks, small little gamble oaks. Australia's got eucalypts everywhere, big and small. So the area we went to next has what they call wet sclerophyll forest. And it's the eucalypts like this in a fairly dense wet area. There we go.
And this is the Blue Mountains, and it's a beautiful valley with incredible eucalypt forests. And these are the iconic Three Sisters here. It's a beautiful view. And the characteristic colors of the Blue Mountains, they come from eucalyptus oil droplets that from the forest that combine with dust and moisture in the air to reflect primarily blue light. So that's why they're blue. It's a lot to do with eucalyptus forests. And these are a couple of the fairy wrens that we saw, the superb and variegated. These, we saw 4 fairy wrens out of the 32 in Australia, and these are unique to Australia. These are wonderful little birds with their perky little tails and beautiful colors. And then in Lake Wallace, we were able to watch a family of great crested grebes. So the parents were going out and fishing and bringing back some fish for the young here. We headed south to Royal National Park, south of Sydney, and had a close encounter with a pair of beautiful cockatoos, and was able to catch this spinebill with a bug in its mouth. And we saw a number of different crimson rosellas, beautiful birds.
They're a daily or several times a day sighting, these crimson rosellas, quite, medium size. And then all along the eastern coast of Australia is what's called the Great Dividing Range. Okay, it's about 40 miles inland, and it's mountains or hills, an escarpment of probably like 3,000 meters. We were headed up to the Barren Grounds, which we'll talk about as more of a heathland. But as we went up the escarpment, we went through this tropical area and at McCary Pass. And, it's tropical birding. So sure enough, here's my pant pocket, and Doug's got this little leech that he just pointed out to me. And that's just the hazards of tropical birding. Only one place did we have a lot of leeches, and that was bad, but this wasn't too bad. There we had, if you've listened to David Attenborough, of course you've heard the lyrebirds, right? And they're the wonderful mimics. And yes, we got to see them and hear them just doing their whole repertoire. And I think you can see the lyre shape of their tail there.
Yeah, so we continued on, and in Australia, there's about 40 robins, and these are real robins, not like the American robin, which is more like a thrush. These are beautiful little birds and very colorful, and much more like what they define a robin in Australia and Europe. And we saw this beautiful eastern yellow robin, and a number of different ones, and we'll show some more. Termite mounds, these are huge, and we saw them as we walked through the park. And after a long day of birding, you got to have a flat white. That's what they call their coffee in Australia. There's flat whites everywhere. There's plenty of coffee. It's fantastic.
It's one of the great things. You don't have to hunt for coffee.
Yeah. And custard pies. So there's 12 species of oyster catchers in the oyster catcher family. And these are 2 of them that we saw in Australia. We've had a chance to see 6 of the 12 oyster catchers so far, 2 in Australia, 2 in South America, and 2 in North America so far. And then we had a beautiful look at a silver gull. So in Booderee National Park, we had a chance to watch this laughing kookaburra, who's a member of the kingfisher family, eating a snail. So he had it in his beak, and with a quick flip up in the air and down the hatch. So he was really fun to watch. And we recorded a bunch of kookaburras calling. See if I can. Yeah, I think so. The sound doesn't seem to be going.
Did you do share audio at the beginning?
I did, I think. And we can just try it again if we want. Let me just try this real quick. And share.
Sorry, we're just.
Let's see.
Zoom.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see.
Are the you didn't hear it went on?
We're not getting the audio. I don't know if
It's coming through on Zoom.
it is. Oh, okay.
It's just not coming through here.
Okay.
See,
Make
sure the volume on your.
Yeah, it is.
turned up.
It is. It's up to 100. Huh. I don't know.
You are recording with audio. We can.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be.
Okay, good.
Hmm.
Well, unfortunately, you won't get to hear the kookaburras. But
Okay. So then on to Mimosa National Park, another cockatoo, the glossy black, and you saw a reptile run across down the path as large as a dog. Well, that would be something, right? And that's what this is. This is a lacy goanna, and it's about 6 feet long, and it's about knee high. So it's quite a reptile. So luckily it just ran on to the bush, but Doug was hot on it and he got great pictures of it. So that's so we are now ready to leave New South Wales, and we're crossing over the border here at Kojingalang into the state of Victoria. And so we looked at, this was really on eBird, this showed us a really hot spot. Okay, so we said, we got to find this spot. And, you know, it's right here, you know, and we drove around and around, you know how it is if you're trying to find an eBird. And then finally we found the spot. Not very many people had been there, but they were true. It was truly a hot spot. We saw so many species there, and it was lots of fun. So this is a rather common one, but everyone should know, silver eye. And then we're just seeing birds nonstop, and we see in Doug's photographing this king parrot. I mean, that's really nice. And then I can just hear some like rustling in the shrubs behind me. And then all of a sudden, oh, something jumps out. I mean, like where Matt's sitting from me, and he's taller than Matt. So, and about 8 feet tall, and he's looking right at me. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And so this was Boomer, or that's what you call a male kangaroo, is a boomer. So Boomer, thankfully, in not too long, decided to run down the path, but no. So some of the other species we saw were the top-knot pigeon and this beautiful white-bellied sea eagle. And this is where we would really like to have the video, but we don't, or the sound, because.
can we maybe try unplugging?
The speaker, I wouldn't unplug. No.
Oh, okay.
Then it'll.
Or we'll come back to this.
Yeah, we'll
okay?
come back.
Okay. And so then on to Cape Conran, and I'll let you.
Yeah, and we were able to see a pair of beautiful sacred kingfishers at the bottom, and these are a little bit smaller than the belted kingfisher. So these are about 9 inches tall versus a belted kingfisher is about 13 inches, and they like to feed in open woodlands and eucalypt forest, versus typically where we see kingfishers are along a stream catching fish. They like to catch insects and invertebrates. And so we were a little surprised to see them in some of these locations, but that's really where they like to feed. And we saw this beautiful turquoise parrot with the beautiful wing. These almost went extinct in around 1900, but since then they've recovered very nicely in Australia. And when you're there, you're always looking up for birds, but in Australia, you have to also look down. So we looked at, found this yellow-bellied water skink on the park.
There's many common birds, just like there are in the US, and every country has what I call their great blue heron, and this is their white-faced heron, and they're fairly common there. And, you know, we have lots of Canada geese, right? Well, what kind of fills that niche in Australia? Well, the black swan. Not that escapee that we all saw over there in Lillymore, but actually black swans are native to Australia. So just everywhere like you see Canada geese here in the US, you see black swans. And they kind of have the same personality. They hiss at you, they get in fights with everything. You know, you got the idea. And we have a lot of, they have, I think 8 different cormorants, and this one is, I think, nice, beautiful cormorant here, a little pied cormorant. It's about 2/3 the size of a double crested, and a little tern on the beach here.
So at Bunyip State Park, one of our target birds was the white-throated nightjar. And we eventually did see them after dusk. It was getting kind of dark, and so I couldn't get a good picture of them, but we did get a chance to see them. And during the afternoon, we had a whole field of eastern gray kangaroo. And in the back, you can see some fallow deer. So these deer were introduced in the 19th century to Australia as a game animal. And unfortunately, they've become invasive. And unfortunately, there's a lot of invasive species in Australia. So, but we saw those there as well. The mistletoe bird is a member of the flowerpecker family, and it's the only flowerpecker in Australia. And it is endemic to Australia. It gets its name from the fact that it likes to eat the mistletoe berry of the mistletoe plant. And then we heard some noisy nesting galahs while we were there.
And then we are on to Cape Otway. Now, this is a great place to stay. Out here at Cape Otway National Park, there's the lighthouse, and there are 5 rooms that have been created from the old lightkeepers' cabins and housing. And everybody's required to leave the park at 4 o'clock and not come back to 10. But you are there in the park, and you have the whole area to kind of to yourself, but only the 5 cabins. So it's very beautiful and peaceful. And you're right at, you know, the southern tip of the Cape. But now and so we wake up in the morning, and of course, like, they were very civilized there, and they left us home-baked bread and many fruit and a whole bunch of items. And they have delicious marmalades and jams, and something that is very Australian, but really, maybe I tried it. I wasn't ready to go Australian, is Vegemite, which is kind of this brewed yeast, not really great for breakfast. Stick to the marmalade, I'll tell you that. And then I just wanted to show you kind of like the habitat here. When we were driving into the park, it's just this beautiful, lush rainforest. So just stunning. All the tree ferns, I've never seen so many tree ferns. I mean, this is just fantastic. And all over, there's these little swamp wallabies. We were seeing these all the time. Black-shouldered kites. And this is the cockatoo that's a little bit less common, the gang. So we got that one.
So I was looking for koalas in Otway National Park, and I could hear some up in the canopy. And as I was trying to find them, I nearly stepped on a tiger snake, which is one of the most venomous snakes in Australia. And fortunately, it slithered off into the bush, and so I avoided that. But I finally found this guy and caught him in mid-yawn up in the canopy, and he was grunting and growling, and that's a way for a male koala to warn off others of his territory, and also for breeding and mating. So we do have a video. Unfortunately, you can't hear the growling and grunting, but he was doing his warning to other koalas. And maybe we'll play it later when we have a chance to.
And here, yes, is a place that a lot of Australians and people around the world like to visit, the Great Ocean Road. And there's no longer 12 apostles or sea stacks. There's only 11 now, but it's quite beautiful. And there were a lot of, this is probably more tourists than I saw anywhere else, but like being in Yellowstone, there's maybe a lot of tourists, but if you get more than like half a mile away from the parking lot, all of a sudden you've got it all to yourself. So just go out and take a hike, and it's quite fine. So then we went on to a unique location, Tower Hill Wildlife Reserve. And I don't know if you guys can see in this photo here, and I'm going to kind of show you. This is an extinct crater, volcanic crater. And, there was a little magma flowed up also in the center, and there was like this little rim. So most of this there's like a 3-mile road out around this little core in the center, but all the rest of it is surrounded by water. So there's just this little tiny land bridge, which is just like 100 feet wide, that you drive out on. So that's perfect for a wildlife reserve, because you can try to maintain and keep it pure if it's surrounded by water. But even that, this is like buckthorn. That's what red foxes are for them here in Australia. Every single park, every single nature area is really working hard, and they've got baits and all kinds of things to try these invasive red foxes, trying to control them. The problem is Australia has to do this because so many of the mammals have burrows in the grounds and can't survive, okay? And they will be all become extinct with all these red foxes. Many of the birds nest on the ground, so they will also be extinct. So the only way to survive is to get rid of these European red foxes that they brought in for hunting. And in this area, the emus had been extirpated, but they had brought them, and they were doing rewilding here at this wildlife reserve. And here's this emu. You can see he's down here on his haunches, and look at the little water dripping off his chin as he's drinking. Some of the other species we saw there were the hoary-headed grebe, and then this red-browed firetail, now aptly named. This bird is the size of a goldfinch, so don't be fooled by how much Doug's blown it up for you. But you can see the red brow up there. There's like 3 or 4 different species of firetails. And then we're on to the beach, and isn't this a beautiful plover? I love this, the red-capped plover. And just like our Sharing Our Shore program, they have a very similar type of outreach, and they're trying to protect their plovers, especially the hooded plover is the one that's most endangered there. They had this in a little nesting area that they had all fenced out and everything. So they have programs similar, trying to keep people and their dogs off the beaches at certain times, etc. And then here's a friend of ours from Waukegan, ruddy turnstones. Okay, so ruddy turnstones, we saw them there. They're whole Arctic birds. This is their nesting here, and shown in red across Siberia and across the Yukon. And then every winter, they're smart. They fly down to the southern hemisphere, or southern United States, and sure enough, they are in Australia, because it's winter in the northern hemisphere, and they're right there. So probably one of the most widely distributed species in the world.
So we headed north from the coast up to the Grampians National Park. And this is a little more arid. It's an agricultural area, but these sky islands of the Grampians are really important for biodiversity. And this was really where we first started to see a lot more raptors. So as we got into a little bit more arid environment, we saw kites and kestrels. We also saw a group of brolgas. So these are a member of the crane family, and they're in the same genus as the sandhill crane. But these are a little bit bigger. They're about 5 feet tall versus the sandhill cranes more like about 3.5 feet tall. This guy is beautiful. We saw him in a number of different areas. He's got a characteristic gray-black crest and incredible red orbital eye ring. Is really quite a sight to see. And this white-browed babbler was collecting nesting materials. Here's another firetail that we saw at Devil's Garden State Forest. These are often used in the pet trade. These are a little more on the vulnerable side due to habitat loss and competition with competitive species, and beautiful parrots. At Little Desert National Park, we had a chance to see 2 wedgies. So these were 2 wedge-tailed eagles. And fortunately, one of them decided to do a flyby. So I was able to capture him here, and you can see his beautiful wedge tail. These are about the size of a golden eagle. So they're a very large bird, and it was really fun to watch. On the road, we had a red-necked wallaby that hopped by in front of us, and we had a nice look at a night heron.
And so then we're even further north, and you can kind of see, because this map kind of shows the green and the brown, we're starting to get more towards the outback, and the vegetation is becoming shorter. We are now in an area, and this is kind of adapted from that handbook that I passed around. This is called the Mallee, Mallee. And you can kind of see a person here in regards to the Mallee. We started seeing a lot of these wood swallows, which are kind of just a chunky swallow, kind of looks like a cross between a robin and a swallow. So, but they were fun to see. They're very social. Hattah-Kelkine National Park is probably as big as Yellowstone. It only has about 8 to 10 miles of paved road, but it's got about 40 miles of sand track. So we were always driving in the sand track versus Yellowstone. I think we saw 5 other cars in a day and a half. So kind of you really stop and chat with people when you see someone for the first time all morning. So. And here's a picture in the Mallee, giving you a little bit more idea of what it looks like. And everywhere you see this spinifex grass. This spinifex grass is very, very stiff and very sharp. And that is what provides the habitat for them. They can actually nest on the ground in that spinifex grass and be safe from predators. And most of them are ground nester. The little Mallee trees, these little eucalypts, are kind of spindly. They're not great.
We had some more beautiful parrots, including both of these in Hattah-Kelkine. Incredibly colorful. It's just amazing to see them in the wild. Everybody's familiar, I think, with budgies, right? So probably you've mostly seen them in a cage, because they are
Doug's family had a budgie.
We had some when I was younger. They're like the third most popular pet after dogs and cats, and so you're typically used to seeing them in cages. But it was really fun to see these in large social groups out in the wild. It was just a joy to see these, and much as these two are being social here. Rainbow bee eaters, they like to perch on branches and then fly out and catch insects on the wing and then fly back to their perch, much like flycatchers. And I caught this guy with in mid-gulp with his little insect. The apostle bird is quite an unusual looking bird. It gets its name because they live in social groups. So typically a breeding pair, and then they'll have a number of maybe 12 to 15 helpers to raise their offspring. And so they group up or team up, much like the apostles teamed up to follow Jesus. So that's where it gets its name. There are 4 pardalotes in Australia, and we were lucky to see 3 of the 4, including this spotted pardalote in mid-leap and a pretty crested bellbird.
Now, we went to Hatakokine and in Madura later, and you know, it was right before we were leaving, and I'm saying, oh, are we sure we really want to go to this area? We know it's pretty birdy and everything, but I'm looking at the temperatures there. It's 105 every single day. You know, it doesn't barely get down to 80. You know, this is going to be miserable. Well, we get there. It doesn't get up to 68. I mean, it was the cold snap. The locals were all just like, but can you believe this? Whatever. Anyway, it was very cold for that area. Okay, like high 68, lows in the 40s. And we're out walking in the early morning, and we walk along the trail, and hey, I haven't met a guy like this before. Okay, this is the central bearded dragon. I would say, what do you say, 2-3 feet long, something like that. And I can see him way up the road, and he's just, I'm like, oh, we got to run up there and no, that guy did not move at all. He's just trying to soak up some rays.
He was frozen.
He was frozen. He's got his mouth open. He never moved at all. He's just waiting for some rays to come and warm him up. So lots of other things, the golden orbs, and this is our flock of emus. You know, there's ostriches in Africa, rheas in South America. Australia's got emus. And here we saw them sometimes in pairs and sometimes in a flock like this running along. So cool.
So our Australia bird count's at 181 at this point.
Okay. We now are going to another state, which is South Australia, is a state. It's not just the area, South Australia. This was a unique reserve. Across, okay, in the Americas, you have Audubon organizations, but in Europe and Africa, Asia, Australia, you have BirdLife organizations. So it's the equivalent in those countries. BirdLife Australia had purchased this old sheep station, which was, you know, size of a national park. It was not a productive sheep station because it was right on this edge between kind of like areas that you can do for agriculture and areas of the outback desert, which are just totally empty. But it was wonderful for birds because of this biodiversity in this edge area. So it was all set up for birding. It's the only place I've ever been. It's a whole national park, and it's owned by BirdLife, and you bird there. That's what you go there for. There's about a 25-mile road, and like every couple miles, you've got a water station and a hide. A hide is the British name for bird blind, okay? And so some of the blinds, the hides, had water stations like this, just a platform with a drip. Others were a small dam, which I'm like, wow, I don't see a dam. Well, dam just means it's a pond that they built. So that's another British name for something that confuses you. And we sat in one of these hides and watched some birds for a while with a guy, and he just really wanted to tell us about his ute. So I took a picture of his ute here. You'll see these all over, a ute or a utility vehicle, and man, are these decked out. Okay, look at this guy. He's got
Here's solar panels. He's got a satellite, just a satellite hookup. He's got all his pulls out. He's got his cooktop in there, his fridge, electric fridge. You know, what's the ice? You know, they don't sell ice in Australia. And then, of course, here's his exhaust pipe. You know, it's going to be going through deep water. We went through water, but we don't need that. Okay, and but there's his exhaust pipe. He's got his roof guard here on the front. He's got a satellite communication with his other riders. He's decked, and there's many like this if you're out there in
Very
Australia. But I don't know how much he spent on this ute, but it was very utilitarian. So some of the species we saw, isn't that a cute little cuckoo? I like that one. But these are even better. Diamond doves. Diamond doves, which we decided was
Sparrow, it's about the song sparrow size.
song sparrow size.
They're kind of look a little bigger, but they're actually song
Yeah,
sparrow
that's
size.
blown them up. This is bigger than life. Okay, tiny little doves. And then over here, oh, don't you think that you like to see? You know, people have cockatiels. I know Susan Lambert is very proud of her cockatiel, but there's a whole flock we saw. We saw, you know, 8 to 10 cockatiels flying around, multiple little flocks here at BirdLife Australia. So this is just a fantastic reserve. I mean, there's just so many birds you can see there. And I do love cockatiels. Zebra finches, these are often sometimes in the pet trade as well. Brown falcon, brown goshawk. Look at the glimmer here on the cuckoo. It's like glimmering iridescent green.
Beautiful. So we continued on to from Glue Pot over towards Adelaide and went to Coorong National Park. And we had planned to spend more time in what they call the Murray River area, but they had significant flooding earlier that spring. And a lot of these areas where we had planned to get more ducks and birds in the water, a lot of these areas were flooded and they simply weren't there. They probably were trying to eat and go elsewhere to get food. So we did eventually see some barren geese, which is an iconic geese in the area, and both Caspian and great crested terns here. We had a nice look at this elegant parrot. The colors on this are really incredible. It's hardly got any beak at all, and very small but beautiful parrot with a blue headband and blue wing. This white-fronted chat, you can see from the barbed wire, this is a very tiny bird, but it was really quite distinctive with its colors. And a golden-headed cisticola. This has beautiful colors, typically in the marsh, and that's where we saw this bird. I really enjoyed having a close look at it. Our bird count is at 200 as we wrap up in Australia. We had a nice look at sharp-tailed sandpipers and a group of beautiful Australian pelicans. And they have gone and repurposed a lot of the silos. So in these towns, they have these huge silos that they're no longer using. They're no longer storing their grain here, but they wanted to repurpose them. And so they have artists in the community and area that paint wildlife, people, and different things. And it's really a fun. So we had a chance to see a lot of honey eaters. We saw them throughout our trip. There are about 75 honey eaters in Australia, and we got to see about 18 of them. And they range from robin size to sparrow. And so you can see kind of the variety in the colors and shapes and configurations. We really like this yellow plumed honey eater. They really were a lot of fun to see. So you can kind of see the whole range that we saw while we were there. So we left Australia and took a short flight down to Tasmania, to Hobart. And while we were in the harbor in Hobart, we had the favorite fish of Tasmania, which is the blue-eyed trevella. And that was really, really good. So there are 12 Tasmanian endemic bird species, and these are some of the ones that we saw. We wanted to go to Waterworks Reserve to see the mammals at dusk, but we had a chance to see some of these endemics before we got to nighttime. This Tasmanian native hen is a flightless rail. And these are more endemic species that we saw, including the robin, the green rosella, and the black currawong with his beautiful beak and yellow eye. So at dusk, we started to see the mammal activity really increase. And Tasmania is just amazing for mammals. I mean, Australia, we did see some, and the koalas were great, but in Tasmania, it was absolutely fantastic. So at nighttime, the possums come out. We had a group of common ringtail possums running through the canopy, and out in the field, Bennett's wallabies were grazing and feeding.
So then we were on to an island off of Tasmania, an island on an island, and this is where it was our cottage that we had there, and just kind of gives you what the habitat is. This island has only one restaurant on the whole island, so basically you're in a self-catering cabin. But what's nice is there are so many artisan food vendors. There's bakers, there's a guy making cheese, there's people selling fruit at little stands. Put your money in the box, okay? So all these, whole lunch we had purchased just as we drove onto the island. And look who we got to share our lunch with. Yes, these are patamelons. They're little tiny guys. And I think Doug's got a video here. They're in the, so here they are. Yep, they're just little tiny guys, kind of kangaroo-like in that same general, but much smaller. And nice to share. And then we went out on there's a neck between the two islands, and they have built a lookout. You can, in the evenings, sooty shearwaters come in, and you can see them nesting there. And also little penguins came in. I'll talk about that more at a different location. Kelp gulls, and then while I'm walking through, I noticed something scurrying, small, and I don't see this part. I only see the rump, and I'm like, what kind of weird little creature is that? And it's because I didn't see these, the barbs, which is what you think of for an echidna. But then I read then later is that in Tasmania, because it's so cold there, that the echidnas actually grow a fairly thick fur, and so they cover up all the barbs.
So we got some more beautiful robins, both the flame and the scarlet. These are really incredibly beautiful little birds. And we stayed at the Hamlet Downs Country Farm, and the owner told us that there was a platypus in his pond.
His dam.
And his dam. And so I went out and was looking around and waited for probably about an hour. And finally he came out and he was feeding around the edge of the pond. And I had some really nice close looks at this great little platypus, about 1.5 foot long. Cute.
And then we went up the next day to the top of Mount Field. About 3,000 feet elevation. The latitude is similar to Chicago down in Tasmania. And oh, look at these guys. These are endemic to Tasmania. They're pendani trees. and they're affectionately called Dr. Zeus trees. So fun to kind of hike around in those and bird there and find some of those honey eaters. And then we went on to Cradle Mountain, and Cradle Mountain National Park has lots of beautiful sites, including lots of button grass that you see over here on the right. The soil is rather loose, and that there's perfect habitat there for this guy, a wombat. Okay, and a wombat, it's like a small dog, okay? And they have to have a pretty big burrow if you're a wombat. And they've got tunnels, maybe 30 feet long and down 10 feet. So they are quite the diggers. And so, but they're cute. And this is some more, just a stunningly beautiful park. If you have a chance, definitely go there.
And a beautiful little striated field wren. So the Tasmanian devil is very difficult to see in the wild. So we ended up going to a conservation and breeding center. And one of the challenges with the Tasmanian devil is that they have developed a facial cancer. And then it spreads very easily throughout the population because they tend to bite each other and spread it. And so one of the things that this center was doing was vaccinating them and then looking to release them back into the wild again. And so we had a chance to see two of them doing a tug of war on a kangaroo tail. And also eastern quoll is also very difficult to see in the wild. And we had a chance to see that as well.
So then we went on to Lily Cove Beach. This area is where they have little penguins about 15 inches tall. They come in, they leave their nestlings in the burrows. This is the nestling before dusk, and then they come up at dark they've been out swimming, and they'll come back and feed their young. So there was a group of volunteers, much like our Audubon organization, monitoring this site for 3 months. They came every single night, and they had probably 30, 40, 50 people on the platform. So they would just make sure that people were not harming the penguins or disturbing them in any way. You were able to use a flashlight if you put a red cellophane over the flashlight. So do bring some red cellophane with you. Then on to Narawantapoo. Once again, a snake looked down. And we had to just, we like art, we like wine. Okay, birding is also fun too. Okay, and so we stopped, and this is one of the first time. Oh, Tasmanian wine is really delicious and unique. Instead of a cheese plate, which you normally get at most wineries in the US, they have seafood plates because Tasmania is famous for that. So you can see the octopus and the oysters, etc. It's fun. And then on to wine glass. That looks somewhat like a Wilson snipe, don't you think? The Latham snipe up there. And this is a common bronzewing. It's about the same height as a mourning dove, but we looked it up today, and he weighs twice as much. He's a chunky mourning dove with a lot of color. So. And then now we're leaving Tasmania, and so our last 5 days, we fly up to Brisbane. And we went there because this is truly, a lot of people come to Australia for the true tropical birds, and we can get that type of habitat. One of the things that was fun for us to see, and you can kind of see there what the habitat looks like, is the brush turkey. Brush turkeys are megapodes. Megapodes are a special family of birds that the male turkey builds a huge mound, probably the size of a car, like one of those utes, okay? All just out of leaves. He just scratches everything up, this big, huge pile of leaves. One or maybe up to 3 hens come in and lay their eggs, and then they say sayonara, okay? The male does not sit on the nest. They've got so many leaves that are rotting and decaying in this humid rainforest that he just adds a few more leaves, takes a few leaves away, and he keeps it just the right temperature. 30 days later, he's got chicks, and I see him everywhere. The female is, she just is sayonara. She never bothers with any of this stuff, and he's out there. And sometimes, you know, he's got his 1, 2, 3 hens he's taking care of, and so sometimes we saw him with like 18 little chicks following him down the road, and he's catching bugs for some of them, and the rest of them better find their own bugs, I think. So anyway, it was fun to see.
So again, we had mammals, you know, coming out at dusk. So we had spent the day in the rainforest, and we're bird watching and looking for animals. And then at dusk, I was starting to take pictures of this red-necked pademelon, and I took a bunch of photos, and then I realized later that a little Joey was peeking out of its mom's pouch. So we continued on to Lake Sampson Vale, and this beautiful Australian king parrot was feeding in the bushes near our lodge. And we had a chance to see these drongos with their characteristic forked tail, and the dollar bird, which is a member of the roller family. And in Boondall wetlands, they had very helpful signs. So this sign was warning people that there are bird watchers and bird watching in progress, and do not disturb the bird watchers. So we need more of these signs, right? So we really appreciated that. And this gray butcher bird was on a bug.
So then we went to the Eagleby wetlands, and we went there to photograph the royal spoonbills, and there was probably 7 or 8 other photographers there, and we were enjoying looking at those. And then we decided to take a walk towards the back of the reserve, and we were probably the only people that did. Most of the people came up and took their photograph of the royal spoonbills and then left. So we were wandering around, getting different bird species, and like sometimes you hear birds making a racket, right? I hear it's mainly jays and crows, but you're hearing birds making a racket. That's always a sign, you know, there's something cool there. And so we're wandering along, and we finally see, we hear all these songbirds, and there they are. That we took it with a long lens, but they were really fun to see these boo-books. We had heard these many nights, the boo-books, and this is the first
Boo-book,
time.
boo-book.
Yeah, they're a type of now,
Yeah.
but the boo-book family. Okay.
We had only heard them until
This time. Then we went up to O'Reilly's Rainforest Retreat, which is the Disney World of bird lodges. Okay, that's just really okay. But we were able to see the Albert's lyrebird and white-browed scrub wren. We realized why we didn't go to Brisbane in February and Queensland for most of our trip, because it rained just pretty much 70–80% of the time we were there. So February, stay out of
Wet.
Queensland. It's the wet. Then we went and we saw a David Attenborough thing, right? The bowerbird. And so here is his bower right here that he's built, and he is a satin bowerbird, so he loves blue things. And sadly now, most of the blue things are plastics, okay? But he's decorated his bower, which is not the nest, okay? It's the bower, which is really just the stage props, the theater props for his mating dance that he's going to do to try to attract a female. And Doug also got these shots, and this is the mom, and this is the hungry juvenile teenager saying, feed me, and okay, you're bigger than I am, please go find something yourself. This is a thickney. I think you can see he's standing up straight there, and here he is. He's just sat down. He was kind of funny. He'd lower himself up, and then some black-faced monarchs. And I love this. You guys all know, we have a lot of birds, towhees, brown thrashers that are, always in the leaves, shuffling them. All the birds that we have scrape front, back, front, back, front, back. Log runners have a unique bone that they can actually go left, right. And this bird is way deep in the deep, dark part of the forest there. And I thought this is hard for Doug to capture. But you can see there's this little leg going out to the right, and sweeping left and right. So great shot.
So we almost, in Lamington, almost ran over this snake. So I jumped out of the car really quick and ran over to take a closer look. And the blue tongue is a dead giveaway that it's a python. So this is a carpet python. And he was in no hurry. He was just moving along. He was about 8 feet long. And it's really fun to see.
And here we are at our last site, Kumbaba wetlands. And I just love this description, the magpie goose from Birds of the World. A primitive, aberrant goose-like species, now generally thought to be sufficiently distinct to be placed in its own family, monotypic. So, yeah, this kind of looks like mom and her chicks. This is dad, but most geese don't have knots like this and all this skin fit and a hook on their bill. No, and then climbing in a tree, and look at these things. These really look dangerous. I haven't seen geese with those kind of more talons. So here's some of the other things. You can see this beautiful area right in the suburbs of Brisbane. So the Hakanas. And then we did a 3-hour walk this last morning. And I'm saying there's kind of a number of kangaroos here, Doug. So I said, I'm going to start counting them. And I quit counting when I got to over 200. So that was a lot of kangaroos. Yeah. And most of them were kind of just feeding, but there was a few they decided to.
Boxing.
And Kumbaba, there are lots of cuckoos in Australia. Okay, this is also a cuckoo. This is a Pacific coal. This is the juvenile. This is, what size do you think?
It was big.
Yeah, that's probably 20 inches. And its host parent is this noisy friarbird. And so that was our journey, birding down under, 262 species. Not that many for that long a trip. I would have probably got more if I was going through the Western United States, but such unique, unusual mammals and so many unique, unusual bird families. So we looked at the number of families that we had. And in Australia, we had 74 bird families, which is 30% of the total number of bird families in the world. In the US, we're now at 550, and we only have 68 bird families. So there's a lot of diversity in the bird species there in Australia. So Australia is a wonderful place to travel. Okay, it's very, very easy. I mean, the hardest thing is taking the long flight over there. But after that, it's very easy to drive. Okay, there's lots of, you think, oh, this is the main road. Oh, this is like my interstate. No, this is just a fancy 2-lane. Okay, there's lots. If you might want to consider like some kind of SUV or Hilux pickup, because you are in the national parks driving a lot of sand type roads. We did drive through creeks and stuff. Cost very reasonable. I'd estimate that hotels are maybe 70% of the US pricing, meals, very economical. So very safe. So I know some women don't feel like they can travel by themselves. You can definitely travel here. Okay, it's just really wonderful. Not that many people anywhere. So it's a nice time. So any questions from the group? Or from the chat? You got any questions?
Yeah, so you guys figure out the species completely on your own? The two of you, you guys ever going through?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we study every time before we go. We spend a lot of time going through eBird and we quiz ourselves. We go to, the site. I look at all the eBird pictures. After a while, you start to know it. Watch some videos. There's lots of videos out there now. And, we can, if we need to, we'll put it into iNaturalist or something.
Were there
But-
some that you didn't get photos of that you're just like, yeah, identify since, I mean, you're not.
Oh,
Pretty much we identified most everything, and some of the photos weren't obviously as good as others. I took so many. But but doing that pre-work is really valuable. So every trip we go on, we probably spend 1 to 2 months looking through the birds before we go, so that we know when we see them in the field, probably 95% of them. And so that really helps.
and Australia is not
Makes
as
a big
hard
difference.
as like parts of South America. Oh my gosh, like the wood creepers, my gosh, they just all look this, and tree runners, they just all look the same. I mean, they're really hard to differentiate. These birds are pretty colorful in Australia, that really helps a lot.
There's
So,
no hummingbirds either, which are really hard to sometimes figure out.
yeah.
So 2 questions. First, did you use a tour guide at all, or did you plan this all on your own?
Just our own. We always do. We always just do our own. And we didn't even have, sometimes we'll hire local guides. Okay. But I don't think we hired anybody in Australia.
So then the second question, you were there just over a month. How
Mhm.
long did you stay at each location, or did it kind of vary depending on where?
Usually 1 to 3 days. Okay. So just kind of milling around on to the next spot, another little park.
And it's a different model than, we had been in Costa Rica, and you're really very lodge based, and here it's all, you do everything yourself. So it's self catering, self driving, self everything. And so it really is a different model, but it's really fun.
Almost exactly the questions I was gonna ask. So it did sound like there were just a couple of lodges at the end, like one where you saw all the mammals at night. It sounded like-
Oh, no, that was actually at the waterworks.
Oh,
Oh, where we saw all the mammals, that was mainly at the Waterworks Reserve, which is where the water catchment area is for the city of Hobart. They have a park around that area and they call it the Waterworks. And so we just went out there ourselves. We did bring a flashlight and we got a speaker. So we're self-sufficient.
we
so-
were at some bigger lodges occasionally, but pretty rarely,
Yeah.
nothing like Costa Rica is just very,
No,
there's nothing like that.
That's Costa Rica.
Yeah, that's Costa Rica. And so we were honestly expecting, I think, a little bit more like Costa Rica, but it really, you're just on your own. So you'd show up at 8 o'clock after a long day of birding. You'd show up at 8 o'clock at a pretty well-known hotel, and there's nobody there. The place is locked and it's dark. So then you have to call up and say, so how do we get in? And so, there's a lockbox around the back, and here's the code, and get in yourself, so it's like nobody works after 4
Yeah,
PM.
5 o'clock, every shop is closed.
Nobody
Every
works.
restaurant closed by 8 o'clock, unless you're like in one of the big, major cities. So it's hard for us birders.
Yeah.
Bring your own food, okay? But there are flat white stands everywhere. That's the good thing. I can live with that.
Store or?
What?
Flat white, what is flat?
Oh, that's a
coffees.
latte.
Yeah, it's a latte. It's their version of the
Their
latte.
latte.
Yeah. So they
You can get flat whites now. They're kind of coming into the US, but
it's a variation on a latte. So, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Doug and Charlotte, what can we say? And thank you so much. Charlotte's on the board of Lake County Audubon, for those who don't know that. And Doug has been on it in the past, and they're both local and they run a lot of our bird walks. They won't be as exciting maybe as this, but we really appreciate that you guys, you do such a great job putting things together and explaining them, and thank you. Do any of our board members have some announcement that I missed? Because I didn't really make my announcement that they want to say out in the audience. They're all sitting there wondering. No, I guess not. So we appreciate you all coming in the audience here, and there's lots of food for those who didn't come. They don't get it, but they can go to their own refrigerators and whatever. So, and Jenny Plor, who's standing in the back from the Cook Library, we really appreciate all the help she gives us setting up our program. And we will